Welcome back. You're watching the South African Morning. My name is Cindy Mabi, and on to our headline story this half hour. Political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe blames a former or erstwhile Eskom CEO André de Ruyter for creating a fertile ground for what he says is the destruction of Eskom by pushing ahead privatization. He says the power utility has been on a downward spiral ever since, and that the former Eskom CEO should have admitted his failures rather than penning a book. Professor Seepe joins us now. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time. Just again, I think this had been reiterated many times that André de Ruyter seems to have missed his purpose of doing the job as opposed to gathering data and research. You say he has created fertile ground for privatization. Won't you expand, please?
Well, I think we must situate these developments within the context of a debate in society about who are the best, or whether the state is best primed to provide the services like electricity. And this has been an ongoing debate. There are some people who felt that government is inefficient, and if this is left to the private sector, then we might get better services. But this ongoing debate has been with us since 1994. And in 1998, the government of the day and Mandela and Mbeki were advised that the expansion of electricity to historically black communities would require that it should be matched by energy generating capacity. And that was not done because there were some people who said the private sector will provide that. And that was unfortunately not the case. And in a sense, the government found itself unable to deliver. Hence, we had the first load shedding. And the former president, Thabo Mbeki, did acknowledge that the government should have heeded the advice that emerged from Eskom as well as from the unions. Be that as it may, the issue of load shedding was resolved, and that's when Marcella Koko and Brian were in charge. But the debate about whether the state, given the glaring incompetence that we've seen, is still the relevant structure to deal with the issue of provision of these services was always a bigger question. But
yes, Professor, sorry to interrupt you. Just very quickly, in the interest of time, we want to try and get as many issues at least detangled as much as possible. Privatization in itself is not necessarily the problem. The problem is that when there is glaring incompetence, corruption, and lack of service delivery within the public sector, that cannot go on unabated. So what are we saying? Is privatization, are you against privatization, or are you saying that the state-owned entities are deliberately made dysfunctional so that they can be sold off for a song?
Well, the issue is not so much about that there are areas that should not be privatized. I think there's an argument on that. But when you talk about basic services and you start privatizing them, those in the private sector are driven more by motive of profit, not so much of service. So that is a concern that people have raised. But also, I don't think as a country we have come to agreement to say we should privatize our SOEs. But what we've seen is that through stealth and without announcing the SOEs, and of course, one of the technique of making sure that you prepare them for privatization is to make sure that they don't work. And I quote Noam Chomsky, who says the standard technique is you defund them and you make sure that they don't work, and you make people angry. Then people say, well, maybe we should privatize them. So we should understand that this is a part of a strategy of making sure that we move these entities into private hands who are driven by different motives. So the issue here is who is best to deliver this without undermining the public. And of course, it's also about making sure that you have the right people there. The Ruyter was definitely the wrong person. He has demonstrated his incompetence from get-go. And what we have seen is that he spent more time almost writing a book, policing people. And when you look at the book, it's so detailed that the person was not paying attention to what he was supposed to do. And that matter was raised much earlier, and he was defended by President Ramaphosa, defended by the ANC, and defended by Pravin Gordhan, the minister. And later, they were to tell him that he actually has misplaced his focus. Actually, Pravin Gordhan goes to an extent of even accusing him of pretending to be Mr. Know-all, and also as clearly somebody who has never run a plant. And of course, the people asking, why did you appoint him in the first place if you're going to take that position? But the long and short of it, in terms of the thrust of the article, is that we should be asking ourselves, is this failure orchestrated? Is it deliberate? And if it's deliberate, then we must be very concerned. But still, we should be asking, don't we have people who can address load shedding? And the answer is yes. Well, some people have suggested that those who have tried and managed to succeed in the past must be brought back. But there are other people who says that you can find other skills, people who are skilled who can actually do the
and
work.
Prof, just
But
I think from a layman's point of view, I hate to interrupt you, but just for the common man, to understand what is at play here, because there are differing views depending on what side of the fence you are on, whether you're on the side of defending Eskom, the allegations of corruption, sabotage, etc., or whether there is a concerted effort to just make it seem like it's run down to a point that it is being dismantled and privatized. We've also seen on record those that remained anonymous saying that Eskom doesn't have a capacity issue. The issue is that monies or maintenance monies had been redirected by the erstwhile CEO to other projects which were not urgent, and that's why we're sitting with this crisis.
Yeah, I think your last comment is a correct one. It is not so much that we should turn a blind eye to incompetence. We should not turn a blind eye to corruption, but we should not use those as an excuse to start saying we should move towards privatization. What is very clear is that many people who have been there and engineers have said that the matter can be resolved, and it can be resolved in a shorter space of time. But there has been a reluctance because if you understood some of the pronouncements that were made, there was a lot of emphasis within the ANC on the renewables, especially the president. It's only now that there has been an acceptance that coal is king, that we're not going to move away from coal. And that would probably refocus the energy that had been spent in trying to pursue something that was not going to address load shedding. But the long and short of it is that SOEs, if they can be saved, they should be saved, and they should be in the public hands. And what we need to do is to get the people who are competent. But to bring people who are incompetent, then use that as an excuse, is not the answer. Instead, what we'll do is that we are going to end up in a situation where you are going to have the have-nots and the haves. And the haves will always be those people who have been privileged by previous dispensation.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Sipho Seepe, joining us via Zoom. His article on iol.co.za, a group chief executive officer with a double agenda, Eskom, referring to Eskom. You can read that for yourself. Thanks, Prof. Now.